Hello, welcome once again to this tutorial. Now we'll be diving into functions. Function, as we all know, we have something like this. Function, my function, sorry. So we have something like this. And we have a return statement that says A multiplied by B, right? So this, I have declared this function. This is what we call function declaration, whereby I declare the function and then the values, or no, not the values, the function. So here, if I want to call this function, I have something like, let's say, let results equals my function. Now, like this, I have called the function. So this is what we call function call. So, but if you see here in my console, there's an error I'm getting. So that is because I didn't pass any a parameter in a function. So here, this parameter is accepted and what? An argument. Is expecting an argument. So here I can put something like 5 comma 6. So this is now serving as what? The argument. So if I want to get the result of this, I have to do what? Log the result. So automatically I will see the result here. So what happens here is function declaration with the parameters passed. Then here is what I call, or I can call it, invoke the function. So here is function call or function invoke. So here is where I get the result, right? So now there's another format which you know as what? The arrow function. So I can decide to do something like this. Let arrow, I can set to use the arrow, be funny. Then my function have something like this. So I have something like this. So in that the same vein, I'm still passing my what? My parameters. Going to be A, comma, B, right? So I decide to do something like this. Then I will now come down here to call my function. Sorry, if you notice there's an error here. So this is how it's supposed to be. So this is function declaration. I've declared this my function. So what I'm going to do now is I'll come down here and say let my function equals what? I need to, that is let result equals my function and then the argument. Let's say 2 and 3. So if I want to get the result, I will do something like log results. Automatically I'll get the result on my console. So this is for what? Arrow function. Then there is this format in arrow function still that was introduced in EX6 2015, but is majorly used on what? Event listeners, array method, or callbacks. So this is this type of function, the add event listener function, whereby you listen to any event. It could be click, it could be hover, it could be mouse down, could be mouse down, and so on and so forth. So, but if we make use of click, Then here we're going to have our normal arrow function syntax, and then whatever we want it to have here. So let's quickly see how this one works. So if I go to my HTML, I can say let me have just a button, submit, and then with ID of what, btn, right? So coming over here, I have to initialize the button by saying let's btn equals document dot get element by id btn, right? So now I can access this btn on global value. So I can have something like btn. Now I want to make use of my event function. So I have btn dot what, at event listener. So which event is it listening to? Click. So on click, I have something like this. So I can decide to log whatever I want. So but before I proceed, let me initialize a value. Let's say let x equals what, 6. So here I can decide to say let's log the value of x. So if I click, you see you are not seeing anything. So if I click on this input, I will see 6 here. So if I click on it, so this function is listening to an event. And the event I set it here is what, on click. So it will be listening to the event. Once the button is clicked, then it will initialize the function. It will execute the function. So let's quickly run a little demo for us to understand how this function works. So here over here in my HTML, you can see what I commented as a commented code. That's just a form where I make use of some inputs. So over here in my JavaScript, I will try to initialize all those values by saying let text equals document dot get element by id text. I know some of you will be confused with this syntax. What is document dot get element by id? But we are going to discuss it fully when we go to DOM. So you can decide to proceed by saying let email equals document dot get element by id email, and decide to do this, and this will be for password. This will be for password. So these are for the values. So the first one is for the value, the input type of what, text. The second one is for the input type of email, and the third for the input type of what, password. So the last but not the least, I have to initialize the button by saying let's btn equals what, document dot get element by id. We have what, btn. See, so this is it. Now let's add our what, our event function. So I can have my btn dot add event listener, then which event, click event. Now I'll proceed with what, my arrow function. So now automatically, what do I want it to what do I want to achieve? So first, I want to log the value of all these inputs when I click the button. So before doing that, remember we're dealing with form. So the page will tend to load. Like if I should fill in all this value, if I click on this, you see the page loads. So in order to prevent that, as a function we call the dot e dot not email, dot what, prevent default. Make sure you get the spelling. Otherwise, the function will not work. So I will pass this event here. So with this, what else do you want to achieve? We want to log the value of all these inputs. So we'll be accessing this input through the what variables. So now we are going to have for the input type of test, we have test dot what value. So the same thing applicable to others. So for that of email, we have email dot value, and that of password, we have password dot value. So automatically, if I should fill in all this, if I click on email, so you see, I'm able to get the values of those email. So with this, you can get the values of this email and submit to what the back end. So you can make use of this function to collect the emails, the values. That is when you are validating a form. So you can just use this to validate a form and even send the data to backend. So I hope you find this video helpful. Now we have come to the end of this video. See you in the next one.